Kia ora, and welcome to part one of setting up your mix session. So hopefully throughout the classes or within the other videos, you've seen the process of putting things into folders. Once you get to your mix session, it's a good idea to go through and make sure you've got folders. You can nest them within each other, but the main thing that you should have at the end is 3 main folders plus your master. And these are the stems that you're going to be bouncing out at the end of the session. So you're going to have a separate send of just your effects, just your dialogue, just your music, and then the actual file, the stereo master that you're bouncing out. You'll notice that there's some other tracks within my session. So I've got the old OG soundtrack, I've got Footsteps Processor 2, and I've got some other process tracks. So all of these tracks were tracks that I was using for sound design. Once you're finished with them and you're thinking about submitting, it's a good idea just to get rid of those tracks. You could hide and make them inactive if you're worried about using them again during the mixdown session. But once you are completed with them, it's a good idea just to delete them. And as you'll see, I'm going to do a save as with this session, so you could always open up the original session again. So I've gotten rid of all the excess tracks there. I'm actually going to hold Option and open up all my folders and just make sure on the track list, see there's some hidden tracks. These may be ones that I haven't decided to put any sounds on. You don't actually have to find the track, you can delete tracks direct from the clip list. Here's some more hidden tracks down here, Radar, Scope and Heal. I know I'm not going to use those, so I'm going to delete them. I've got a whole lot of extra bits of audio on the end that I was using for processing, so I can just go through and if I really want to clean all of this up. So that's all unused, anything after the end marker, all unused audio, and I could go through and tidy up. I'm just going to go Shift-Command-U. Remember, Shift-Command-U shows you or selects unused files. And then from here I'm going to go Shift-Command-B or clear those files. I'm just going to remove them from the session for now because I may want, I need to do a save copy in to make my session smaller at the end. So let's go again, Shift-Command-U, Shift-Command-B, remove from the session, hold Option and go yes so that it says yes to all. And now I've just got my files that I'm actually using within the session. And if I double click my magnifier tool, oh, there must be something further down. So this little section between the ruler and the first playlist allows you to select all. So I'm just going to go through because there must be a tiny little piece of audio or perhaps an automation breakpoint at some point. That's another thing to check. I did obviously left a little sliver of something, so I'm going to go Shift-Command-U again, and there it is. So there's just a couple of machine gun things to remove and we should be all good. All right, let's go through and open up the video. Okay. Cool, everything's working. So I'm just going to close the video window and go back to my mixer. So here we are. There's a little bit of leftover EQ from things. If this is just EQ processing that you've done during the course of recording just to see if things fit together, that's fine. But it is an individual mix, so you may want to adjust it as you go. So as we talked about in class, the loudness level that you're aiming for is minus 23 LUFS integrated. I think you can have a variance of 0.5 LUFS plus or minus, so that means as long as your final stereo output measures between minus 22.5 LUFS and minus 23.5 LUFS, you're okay. And this is a fairly easy thing to achieve if you follow these steps. The other number that you have to worry about is the minus 1 decibel true peak. So that's your maximum peak level, can be minus 1. If it's well below minus 1, that's fine. It just has to be anywhere underneath minus 1 dBTP and you're all good. The main thing is to get your overall average level, the integrated LUFS level, to be minus 23 LUFS. So how do we do that? First things first, let's go and throw a Pro limiter under the Dynamics menu, Pro limiter onto your master bus, and I would put it right at the end, your last slot, so that it's measuring everything that comes before it. We're not really going to be using the limiter until your final bounce, we are going to be using this integrated LUFS meter. So we've got integrated LUFS, that's the average of the track from start to finish. We've got the range, which just measures the dynamic range between the loudest and the quietest point. We've got true peak, which is your peak value, and that one should be set to -1 dB true peak. And the easy way to do that is just to set your ceiling to -1 dB true peak. So there it is, -1 dB true peak. Now, anytime the sound hits the ceiling, it's going to be turned down. Job done. As long as you do that, you've met half of that criteria, -1 decibel true peak. Short term, this is just the instantaneous version of what's happening here. When we play through the track, you'll see a graph start to appear and start to build. Each point on the graph is shown in the short term LUFS, and the overall trend of the line, like the line of best fit across through time, is your integrated LUFS. This threshold here, rather than moving a threshold down, actually is an input gain control, which brings the level up towards the ceiling. So if you find yourself at -30 LUFS at the end, integrated, this would be a way to fix it by increasing the threshold, and it's sort of counterintuitive because you're decreasing the threshold, which technically is raising the input gain. Yep, so those are the main controls you need to do, and we discussed brick wall limiters in class in a little more detail. Once I've got that on there, I'm just going to pin that up to the top corner until it annoys me, and then I'm going to open another plugin and move the window so that I can always see this one. Yeah, so now if I open another plugin, it's going to persist in a different part of the screen. So you might ask yourself, well, how do I even start to approach getting my project to be -23 LUFS? In my case, I'm going to turn my DX down by 10 dB. Now, dialogue is the most important thing in a film, for the most part, unless you're talking experimental film. So we're going to be aiming for the dialogue to be hitting that -23 or even a little bit louder. So let's just run through and we can have a look at the meter as it goes through. So I'm going to mute the music and I'm going to mute the effects. And I'm just playing through. And most of the dialogue in this clip, of course, is zombies going "Arr." So I'm going to mute my effects and my music, and I'm just going to run my dialogue. Obviously 10 decibels down is quieter than it should be, but we'll just run it through from start to finish. Most of the dialogue within this track is zombies going "Arr" and June yelling. So it's going to be a fairly dynamic mix, and as we can see here straight away, we've had a little bit of zombie action, which has got us up to -40 LUFS. And this graph of level over time is being created as we go through. The dynamic range will change, the true peak will persist, it'll get to a certain point and be as loud as it can be. And for the most part, we're just looking at an average line. Here's the 23 line, by the way. You can see the blue shaded area, which is indicating the integrated LUFS. So that is the integrated LUFS level if we just listen to the dialogue, so -31. So we've got about 12 dB of headroom, roughly. So if I put this fader back up and I ran it again, it should be closer to 23. But let's just have a look. So I'm going to go into my DX folder, and there's two things I'm really looking at. First of all, these numbers here are the setting of where your fader is at, so it's sitting on the 0 mark, and the peak level that turned up on the meter. So I can see that June's dialogue has 4 dB of headroom. The radio voice only has 1.8 dB of headroom. The zombies, it sort of varies depending on whether they're yelling or not, from 10 to 4 dB. And I think this one was up sort of 1.8, but I clicked on it inadvertently. Not a lot of headroom in here. 4.6 dB of headroom on the master fader for that folder. So what that indicates to me is I could actually add 3 dB on my folder fader, and I could probably add 1 dB to each fader, or I could go in and clip group them. That might be the best way. Something else I showed you in class. If I've got my zombies, the main thing here, my zombie bomber is very loud already. So if I look at my other zombies, which is just sort of grumbling away in the background, I could make a clip group. So if I go clip group, I can make a clip group across multiple tracks, and what I can do here is add a few dB. So if I add, let's go with 3 dB. Now I'm keeping an eye on this guy here because that seems quite loud. So I've added 3 dB overall to my zombies. I've got a little bit of headroom, not so much for the radio voice, but for June. So I could do the same thing for June. I could just add in, I know that I've got 4.6 dB of headroom there, so I could make another clip group, add a bit of clip gain on there, so maybe 3 dB, because I want June to be very loud. June's the main character and also in that central position. The zombies, I've made them a little louder, but they're not important because most of the time they're not really close to the camera, they're off in the distance, so I'm going to be turning them down, but this sort of suits my mix style. So what I've got now, if I play that through again and I run it through in the background, and obviously I will do this high speed, at the end of it we should see a different result. So as we can see here, I got to -21, so that's 2 LUFS louder than my target. The good thing about that is it means I can pull down a few of the bits of dialogue that are a bit too loud for getting in the way of the main dialogue, but I can be relatively sure that if I set everything else underneath the dialogue, that it won't be pushing way too loud above, say, -23. So I'm almost aiming for -23 right now before I even start the mix. So what I'm tempted to do now is to go through and have a look at just the dialogue. So if I bring up my mix window and go through, let's have a look at some things. So those zombies are fine, they're in the background. So far June hasn't said anything. It's not until it gets over here.
Disgusting!
So now that I've heard June's voice, I'm going to say, right, I think some of these zombies are a little bit loud. So I'm just going to pull down this zombie, and I'm just going to pull them all down by about 3 dB. Yep, so let's just get that down. I'm holding Command, by the way, so that I get 0.1 increments on my fader. I just find it a bit easier when I'm doing small changes. So I'm just going to bring all of the zombies down by 3 dB. I don't want them to be louder than June. So let's go back to the June part.
Disgusting!
Okay, so the zombie bomber there is quite loud. I'm just going to baseline zombie bomber down to -6. Oh, maybe -6 is too much.
But to ensure you've got enough to destroy the tower, you'll need at least one more charge. Find another generator.
Okay, so -4. Now, the radio voice we just heard pop out, it sounded a little bit quiet, so here's a good opportunity to use a bit of compression. Why don't I use the stock plugin, so I know you've all got it. I'm just going to run in and grab the Dyne 3 compressor limiter. Alright, so when I'm setting my compression, what I want to do with this radio voice is I really want to limit the dynamic range because it's coming across an earpiece, so it should sort of be maxing out. So I'm going to use quite a high ratio, maybe 10:1. And I'm going to make sure that my threshold is set so that it's hitting the whole thing. So if I get to the radio voice section.
Good, but to ensure you've got enough to destroy the tower.
So you can see, if we look at the level of the radio voice there, there's a few peaks. What I basically want to do is draw a line across them, and that's what the threshold is with a high ratio. So it's hitting that threshold and turning it down by quite a lot. So as I play through that...
Good, but to ensure you've got enough to destroy the tower.
Now, it's not attacking very quickly. It's attacking after 10 milliseconds, which means a lot of these peaks aren't even getting grabbed by it. So I'm going to bring my attack down.
Good, but to ensure you've got enough to destroy the tower, you'll need...
You see how much harder that compressor's working just by having to instantly attack.
Good, but to ensure you've got enough to destroy the tower.
Now you notice how it sounds a little bit choppy because it's reacting so quickly. I'm just going to allow the release time to go up sort of 120 milliseconds, and I'm going to bring in some soft knee. Now what the soft knee does, if you ever look at this point on the graph, a hard knee changes instantly, and part of that choppy sound we were just getting then was the switching of the compressor from on to off. So if I use a softer knee, it basically starts compressing a little early and eases into the compression, so it's almost like it fades over the threshold. I'm just going to try that. So minus 12, it's sort of hitting quite hard there, so I'm just going to bring my threshold back up a bit. Cool, so that's sounding, I mean, it's supposed to sound a little distorted with the coming through a radio signal. Now if I think to myself it needs a little bit more grunt, I'm just going to bring maybe 2 dB. I'm looking at the gain reduction.
Good, but to ensure you've got enough to destroy the tower, you'll need at least one more charge.
So it's hitting that sort of minus 2.5 quite a lot. Now you could go through and bypass it and check.
Good, but to ensure you've got enough to destroy the tower. Good, but to ensure you've got enough to destroy the tower.
So in terms of the loudness, it sounds about the same, but you notice how the good is more consistent now.
Good, but to ensure you've got enough to destroy the tower. Good, but to ensure you've got enough to destroy the tower, you'll need at least one more charge. Good, but to ensure you've got enough to destroy the tower, you'll need at least one more charge. Find another generator.
Cool, so I'm pretty happy with that. So my goals with it were to grab the louder peaks on that and to bring them down, and then overall to bring the level up a little bit just so it sits more consistently in the mix.
Good, but to ensure you've got enough to destroy the tower, you'll need at least one more charge. Find another generator.
Now if we go back to the radio voice here, clear that peak.
Good, but to ensure you've got enough to destroy the tower, you'll need at least one more charge.
And now we can see we've got 10 dB of headroom on that. But of course, I'm not going to use that. I'm going to bring down these zombies. I could go through and do all 4 of them again, but I'm just going to make a new group. So I just hit Command G. I'm going to make it group ID Z for zombie. And now I've made an edit and mix group. What that means is I can bring these faders down a little bit together. So let's bring the zombies down by, I don't know, maybe 6 dB and see how they fit.
Good, but to ensure you've got enough to destroy the tower, you'll need at least one more charge. Find another
Zombie bombs a little loud, but I'm going to be automating this one because they're moving quite a bit. There's another video on automation coming up. So here we go. So now we're sitting at minus 24.5, having bored down the zombies a little bit. So if I wanted to, and I'm worrying about my dialogue being a little bit loud, or louder in the mix, I can always throw up here because I have at least 3 dB of headroom. In fact, what I would probably do is add a compressor here. I'm going to go back to the Dyne 3 compressor limiter and just put it on the folder. Again, I'm going to go soft knee because I want it to ease in. I want it to attack fairly quickly. Release time, relatively long, sort of 100 to 120 milliseconds. This time I'm not going to go for such a hard out ratio because I'm smoothing out various effects, so I'm just going to leave it maybe 4 to 1. So for every 4 dB that goes over the threshold, 1 dB comes out. And once the dialogue signal comes through. So with the quieter stuff, I'm not going to be worrying too much about it. Here we go. Yep, so I'm just adding a little bit, sort of 3 dB, so the loud stuff stays louder and the quiet stuff gets a little bit louder still. And if I went through with that, here we go. So once I've done that, I'm pretty happy, and I'm keeping an eye on all of that going on. So here I am in the mix. There was me just option dragging just to get another compressor limiter here, but I'm going to change the settings now on this one. So this music, the first bit of the music, I really want to put a bit of a limiter on it. Maybe not that much. Just bring it down so I'm getting a bit of a soft clip. That's better. No gain on a limiter like this. And it's working together so you can hear the two. I've got the music sitting underneath, I've got the zombies coming in, I can hear the dialogue clearly. Just going to bring this down a dB or two and just raise this a dB or two.
Disgusting!
So you can see the music's working in there, and then obviously the aftermath music comes back in. I could put the same compressor on that just to keep it under control, and then I've got my music pretty much sussed. I might go through and do some EQ changes, but the music was EQ'd already. In terms of the dialogue, I was pretty careful about EQing it beforehand, but it wouldn't be unusual for me to go and put in a EQ just to cover the end. So with dialogue, human voice, and even zombies and critters like that, not really putting out much below 100 hertz. So I could easily maybe go in and just sort of chop off everything down in this lower area just for clarity, so I'm not getting any subs, and then the subs from my effects and everything like that can occupy this space. If I need a little bit of clarity, remember your Fletcher Munson idea, maybe I would do a little bit of a boost around 1 to 5k, sort of up here, for if you're not really hearing the articulation. If you've got a little bit of proximity effect on your microphone, you might want to pull down. I usually try and find the frequencies that are causing the muddiness, or you can use a shelf EQ sometimes just to gently roll off that sort of 300 hertz and below, just to get a bit more clarity again, combined with a little bit of a peak here. And this is a good chance for me to talk about the idea of order of operations. If I had a EQ prior to the compressor, I'd want to be quite careful about boosting, because if you boost something into a compressor, the compressor will start to work harder whenever that frequency is present. This is how a de-esser works. So if I was pushing it in a bit of clarity here, like pushing up 2k so I could really hear what the voice is doing, this compressor is going to be turning it down more whenever 2k is present, and that's going to be doing the opposite of what I want. So if I did need that sort of boost, I would be much better to make another EQ and add my boost after the compression. That way the compressor's not going to be fighting against it. And this is something you see quite commonly. A cut EQ, corrective EQ before the compression or dynamic control, and then a boost EQ at the end for sweetening, for adding detail. So that's something you can think about as you're going through and doing your mix. I might leave this one here and we'll start into effects levels, automation and things like that in the next one. So we'll see you in part 2.